We're good? All right. Welcome to the Wednesday, May 3rd, 2023 Garrison Board of Education regular workshop meeting and public hearing on the adopted budget. All right, first I will go ahead and call this meeting to order. And Dusty, would you call the roll for us, please?
Jocelyn Aposello. Here. David Gelber.
Here.
Courtney McCarthy.
Here.
Kent Schott.
Here.
Matthew Spicer. Here. Sarah Tormey.
Here. All right, Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. Next, we have accept agenda changes. Do I have any recommended changes to this evening's agenda as presented? Okay. Be it resolved that the Board of Education of the Garrison Union Free School District hereby accept the agenda as presented. May I have a motion, please? Okay. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Nays? Abstentions? All right, we will now move on to the public hearing of the 2023-2024 adopted school budget. I'm going to begin by opening the public hearing. We will then have an overview of the budget. For the board members, there are certain components Joe and Carl need to hit, so it may be review, but we're going to hear them again anyway. Then we will have questions from board members. After that, we'll have questions from the public if anyone has questions. This is a public hearing, so it does allow for some back and forth. And then we will close it and move on with the rest of our meeting. So, podium's all yours.
Good evening, everyone. I will move rather quickly because we have done, I believe, 7 budget presentations thus far. Our last one was at the Desmond Fish Library, where there was an opportunity for the community to engage in some dialogue, ask questions, and we were able to give answers. And all of this is on our website. Every budget presentation that we made, including this evening's, will be posted shortly after the meeting. So I'm going to skip over the objectives and all the parts that have not changed. Our budget goals are in there, an overview of our instructional programs. That is our strategic plan, of course. This budget supports the strategic plan. Here are some major initiatives that, again, I don't want to be repetitive because we've covered this many times. The enrollment slides are here if anyone is interested. By grade level, you can see the enrollment currently and our projections for next year. From pre-K all the way up through 8th grade, how many sections. Also, our high school enrollment, we do see some increases there in the years ahead, but from this year to next year, it is relatively stable, 84 to 85 total high school students. These are just the personnel breakdown. Year over year. There's a few minor changes. One in particular I will point out is recently we decided to partner with Haldane School District to open up a new special education class. So there are 2 Haldane students and 2 Garrison students that are very close in their needs and their skill levels, and we think this is going to be a wonderful opportunity to partner with one of our neighbors and have our students educated here close to home, and I think the parents of all 4 children are very happy about that. This is a little more detailed about the staffing changes. You see here we do need to hire a special education teacher and a teaching assistant. That interview process is well underway, and probably, if not the next board meeting, the one after, we will have a recommendation before the board. We had a really strong applicant pool. This talks about some of the special areas, art, music, phys ed. Basically, the main point of this slide is that year over year, we are maintaining everything in the area of art, music, phys ed, theater, all those exciting classes, the quarterly classes. We're maintaining everything that we've had this year. It's in next year's budget. Also, one other change, you've heard this before, but we are eliminating a part-time CSE chair, and those responsibilities will be transferred over to our new school psychologist, who will also chair CPSE and CSE meetings. He is doing it now in the district that he's in very successfully, and we're confident that he'll be able to do a great job with this here in Garrison next year. Now I'm going to turn it over to Joe, who will go over the business part of the budget, and then we will open it up to questions.
Thank you, Carl. Okay, so we do have some challenges as far as the building the budget for next year. Obviously, debt service, as the project financing was converted to long-term bonds, there's a higher debt service load, and that is the main component there. And then we have increases in health insurance, 5% last year, 5% this year. It was 8% last year. The HVAC system does use a lot of electricity because we are cooling all the spaces now as well as heating. And we do have some increases for transportation and technology. Year over year, we are able to maintain the transportation expenses at a flat number, and that's because of reducing from 4 large buses to 3. We do have some network components that need to be replaced. This is the existing architecture. And then we're looking at, we're moving from using a private company to do our IT support to using the Lower Hudson Regional Information Center. And the majority of the districts in the area use them. And we are getting some funding from Putnam County Sheriff's Department to help support some of the new computer infrastructure because they are used for safety components like the door locks and the cameras. This is just an overlook at the inflation, and obviously you can see the last 2 years the inflation has been far above what has been in the past decade or so. We do now have an adopted budget, so the amounts of state aid are known, and we just got the state aid runs yesterday, I think. So we do know what they are. They're close to what we build into our budget. It's not exactly the same, but they're close. The differences between the previous amount that was shown in the executive budget and the legislative amount is maybe $7,000 less, or a little bit under that. So it was very close. And most of the districts around obviously got significant increases in aid. And the big reason why there's a difference is the taxes in Garrison are very low in comparison to our neighbors. Usually it's about 2 times more at our neighbors. And if you look at a larger region, maybe the Lower Hudson Valley, it's still about 2 times. There's 88 districts in that region, and Garrison is ranked 87th out of 88 as far as the tax rate, and there's only 1 district that's got a lower rate. And then statewide, out of 678 districts, Garrison is 616 out of 678. So 90% of the school districts in New York State have higher taxes than Garrison. So we did reach out to and lobby for New York State representatives for additional aid. So we did review the Senate proposals and the actual Senate budget bills, and the one budget resolution that included $180,000 for Garrison. That was in revisions A and B of the draft budget, but by revision C, Garrison was no longer in there, so the $180,000 for next year is not part of the state budget. So it's fortunate that we did not include that as revenue for next year. Okay, one of the things that's on the budget vote is additional resolution to add the permission to enter into a multi-year tuition contract with Putnam Valley, and this would be similar to what we have for Haldane and Highland Falls, which would allow us to have a very predictable growth in the tuition rate. So the tax cap is determined by the formula from New York State. And the biggest contribution to the change in the tax rate this year is the capital levy and the addition of the bond to long-term finance the capital project. So really, the only three factors in the formula this year is the allowable growth factor and the capital tax levy. And this is our tax cap calculation. So the increase in the tax levy is 3.29% for the year, and that is the cap amount, and that's what's recommended and included as a part of the budget. So Garrison is not seeking an override this year. And the revenue that we have built into the budget is very close to what actually is projected from the state as of now with their legislative budget. But obviously, we had to go with whatever numbers we had at the time. The numbers that were in the governor's proposal are based upon a November snapshot of the state aid data, and then the legislative ones are usually based on a February snapshot. So that's the difference. So we are using a significant amount of reserves in order to preserve the educational program for next year. And there's challenges associated with doing that. Okay, so we did add a special program that's going to start next year, and we do not require any additional fund balance in order to start that program. And the proposed budget is as shown. This is the same that was since that special program was added. That's been frozen since then. So the largest changes are due to the cost of electricity and debt service. Those are the main components of the changes. And this is a required component of the budget hearing, is you have to present the budget into three components: administrative, program, and capital. Capital is the building and any of the maintenance of the building, including operations and maintenance, as well as debt service. Administration is administration of the school, so the principal and the district, the superintendent's office, the business office, those things, and then the rest is program. So 1.4 for admin, 1.3 for capital, and 9.6 for the program component. So these are still some unknowns. We do have the private school transportation requests. There are some new requests this year, which we'll have to meet, including there's one that is in LaGrangeville that we'll have to transport to. So there's a number. And then there is still an outstanding contract negotiations with the GTA. So we do know the answer to the second question. So the answer to the second question is no. So we have to allocate $684,000 of reserves in order to stay within the cap. And most of the reserves that are left beyond that are restricted reserves that can only be used for capital or debt service. And the remaining reserves that aren't restricted, there are going to be some challenges for developing the 24-25 budget. Okay, we reviewed these already. So one large 66-passenger bus and moving to the psychologist as a CSE chair. So the budget is a 3.29% tax increase. If the budget is defeated, we can hold a revote for the same or a revised number, or the board could adopt a contingency budget. Contingency budget would require a 0% tax increase and increase the gap by $341,000, which we would need $341,000 of cuts. In order to do that, we would probably need to eliminate 4 positions, 1 aide, 2 2 teachers, and 1 administrator in order to maintain under the administrative cap. So Proposition 1 is the budget amount of $12,564,788. Proposition 2 is the permission to use $45,000 of the capital reserve in order to fund the installation of new electric water heaters. The balance of it would come from a state grant. And in order for us to access the state grant, we would need to have local funds, local contribution, and that's what the $45,000 represents. And then the third proposition is to ask for permission to enter into a multi-year contract with Putnam Valley for tuition of high school students. We can enter a year-to-year contract, and we do have a 1-year contract that's in place for next year, but this would supersede that and allow us to do that for up to 5 years at a time. So the budget newsletter, which is in the process of being printed, is set to go out in the mail on Friday. And then on Tuesday, May 16th, is the budget vote. And I think we're ready for questions, comments.
Anyone have any questions from the board on the budget as presented? I know there's not a lot of new information. It's adopted. Anything? Just want to say.
Great new slide, that pie chart.
That's a requirement.
It
You
woke
gotta
me
do
right
that.
up, that new slide.
It was exciting to have something new to look at.
How do we compare in terms of our percentage, Joe, do you know, as to administrative versus program?
That is kind of the range that you see.
It looks
In
like what I've seen in others.
Small double digits for administrative is typical.
Okay.
Yeah. You don't usually get into single digits. You don't usually get into single digits for administrative percentage.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, then, if anyone else has any other questions? I just want to thank Dusty for printing and folding all of the newsletters that are about to land in everyone's mailbox in Garrison. This is not-
stickering.
And stickering. This is not something we farm out. It's all done here. So, and it has a fancy insert this year, too.
There's a lot of really nice pictures that also kind of capture all the different things and the different phases of school life here at Garrison, and including high school. So there are some pictures of high school students in there because I think it's important to remind the public that the budget here also supports, if they have children in high school, it also supports that because we fund tuition for the high school students. A lot of people forget that.
I also like on the insert that there's a whole box about how Garrison strives for excellence in education and some of our great initiatives as well. So there's a strong focus on some of the positive things like our Youth Climate Summit and the Green Ribbon Award. So great job, guys. Thank you.
Youth Climate Summit is not this Friday, but next Friday.
May 12th.
Yep.
I'm hoping to see all of Garrison in our parking lot for the evening event. All right. So board members, no comment, questions? I'm going to go ahead and move on, open it up to questions from the public. If anyone, do we have a microphone set up? Or you can come to the podium if you have a question. Okay. I'm going to keep us moving along then. If anyone does have any questions who's watching this later at home, you can always reach out to Joe and Carl at any time by email, call the school, come knock on our door. We'll answer questions. All right. I'm going to go ahead and close the public hearing then and move on to board communications and presentations. All right. Up next, we have the capital project update with Tetra Tech Architects and Calgi Construction. Oh, sorry. Podium's all yours.
Thank you. The clicker. Got it. Thank you, James. It's a pleasure to be in front of you guys again. It's been quite a while. I'm glad to see everyone's looking well. Here with Dominic Calgi, the president of our company, and we're both here to talk about your capital project, where we are in the overall scope of this project. And again, it's been a while, so we're happy to entertain your questions at any point. You can interrupt me, and I'll answer anything along the way. It's a pretty brief presentation, so you're welcome to engage us. Go ahead. Oh, it's me. I have to do it, don't I? There we go. Hold on. Can I go back? Okay, there we go. And forward. Okay. So when last we met, there were a couple lingering items that had to be finished up. We had a significant delay with the doors and hardware on the project, the wood doors throughout the building. If you recall, we had beautiful new floors, beautiful new spaces, but yet the old doors were still in the corridors in all these areas. That also left the district with lingering security concerns because of the safety and security hardware, which was part of the project, had not been fully installed. So we got that resolved. We got the delivery came as promised eventually, and we were able to have all that work installed over the spring break. So that just happened earlier last month, about a month or so ago, and it was generally complete at that time. Another lingering item was the main entrance storefront. As we now know, are getting used to the new way of getting in the building, always into the main office area. That change is part of the security vestibule designed by Tetra Tech Architects that controls the flow of traffic and makes a safer entrance condition. With the Raptor system now is engaged, so we have to put our licenses in there, all that sort of stuff is happening. But previously, that storefront installation had not been installed properly. There were some issues with geometry, which I'm sure everyone saw, and those were resolved, and all the glass was replaced, now with the final glazing and the final configuration. So all that work was done and completed over the spring break also. There still is some remaining work that is in different stages of completion. The sod field, I know you guys are still using that field on a regular basis, but the project scope was, as I'm sure everyone's well aware, was not done to the level that was desired. The sod field didn't take, it wasn't properly maintained, and that is an issue of dispute between the district and the architect and the general contractor, Meyer Construction, about who's responsible for that work. And the architect's pretty clear about what was required in the documents to turn that field over, and that never happened per the architects and our perspective, so that the maintenance of that field was the contractor's responsibility and didn't happen. So that field needs to be replaced or repaired in some significant way to be fully functional. Unfortunately, the level that it's at is likely to involve loss of playing time some season when that happens. So that's an unresolved issue that we're trying to finalize as we wrap up these contracts. Another issue, which I'm sure you're aware of, is ongoing mechanical performance issues with the heating and ventilation systems throughout the building. As Joe mentioned, the costs of that system, they're significantly more than maybe was expected, and the performance has never really been able to keep up with the demand for various reasons. And the causes of that are still an open area of investigation, where we don't know exactly what the source of that issue is, but from our perspective, in terms of the contract scope, the mechanical contractor installed all the equipment that they're required to install and configured it in accordance with the contract. So that's the remaining question is, well, why isn't it working? And why isn't it accomplishing what we all expect in terms of a climate-controlled system? So in some ways, it's been great. It operates, it doesn't have the same issues that a steam or hot water system would have. It's all electric, which is an energy-efficient way to go generally. That's the way a lot of districts throughout the state are moving. That's the way all the new green energy-saving mandates are going. But for some reason, which we don't have confirmed yet, this system is not performing as expected. And then the final item is project closeout. So there are four contracts as part of this project: general construction, electrical, plumbing, and the mechanical contract. We've been trying to resolve all those contracts. Most of the scope of work is done. We'll show you the slide in a second. But there's some lingering change order issues, disputed items, particularly with the GC, and some final items that we're continuing to look back on. There's some issues that are even with plumbing and electrical work that still need to be finalized. So we're trying to get those punch list items wrapped up. Some of them were dependent upon the completion of doors and hardware. There were electrical items that were dovetailed with that, and that led to other things that just have to be finished up. So there's lingering punch list items as we close out the project. But in terms of warranties and guarantees and those sorts of things, all that material has been compiled and is ready for us to close out the contracts. So over the course of this project, we've been talking about change orders various times. And this is an overall chart that shows the total level of change orders. The blue is owner-requested changes, the orange is field conditions, and the gray is architect-related or initiated changes. So I can't do the math of all those, about 230, is that about $600,000 in total change orders, split roughly 41% owner, 39% field conditions, and 19% architect initiated. And in general, with a project of this type, which is an infrastructure in an existing building, a renovation project, there's no large new construction, it's common to have a lot of field conditions that are encountered, and we've talked about this before. And we also were pleased to be able to achieve a number of owner-desired objectives in the scope of this project that made improved spaces such as the one we're in right now. So that's what a lot of the blue represents as well. So this slide has the overall budget, looking at a sort of macro perspective. There was the four contractors on the left, and the original contract amount of $6 million is there on the first column. The second column are those total change orders that we talked about. Those are the change orders that have actually been confirmed. The previous number was actually a little, I'll try to go back. There we go. It's a little bit higher than that. 1.2 plus 2.3 plus 2.3 is around $600,000, which is a little bit higher than this. There are still some change order amounts that we're holding in terms of for the resolution of the project and potential costs that are part of that. But all those potential costs are included in these numbers. The current contract includes those change orders. So if you add the column A with column B, you'll get column C. And the payments made so far are about $6.2 million on what are now $6.6 million contracts. The remaining balance is about $400,000 on all the contracts. And so we're about 94% paid on all the contracts, even though the project itself is probably 99% complete. There's really, as I said, a few lingering punch list items that are still being dealt with. The project spending analysis combines that budget on the left with other soft costs, which are other project costs that are not just construction contracts, and equipment and other, and EduTech, which is the telephone, data, and security contractor working directly with the district. So all of those items fit in with the overall bond amount of the capital project budget on the bottom right, with their $9.9 million. So the original project spending budget was $9 million. What we spent so far is just about $9 million, and we have pending about $588,000, which is the amount we talked about. Is this a laser? It doesn't work, does it? Not on the screen. Okay. The top of the pending column is the remaining balances on the prime contracts plus potential change orders. EduTech, this is just I'm not sure exactly what that money is, but we had a certain budget and we have a little bit left on that budget. And then train equipment, and we can speak to that in a second as well. Then project soft costs includes all the related costs, which is architectural construction management fees, abatement, testing, and surveys, legal fees, and so forth. And so our total cost right now for these project soft costs is 1.8 roughly, which is a little bit under the total budget. So we're on track with the project soft costs. And the overall project costs right now are 9.6, leaving us a remaining balance on the capital project budget of around $280,000. That's including, as I mentioned, all the open and disputed items that are in contention with the contractors related to this project scope. And the next step is that reconciliation and resolution of the contracts, primarily with the general contractor who has disputes and questions about different issues that we're trying to resolve. Project closeout, as I mentioned, which is queued up and ready to go. And then the mechanical performance is the lingering issue that we're all aware of. That's at this point seems to be fully outside the scope of the contracts that we're wrapping up. But that's something we're still investigating. So I think that's it for the slides, and ready to answer questions if you have any.
Questions? I have one. When we close out the project, all those warranties, all those documentations, just because I'm not familiar with it, where do those go? What is the process? Is that going to Joe's office and those will be available there?
Right. All the closeouts are provided to the district digitally on a flash drive and also physically on bound books. So you have the copies of those warranties and guarantees, most of which took effect when the project was substantially complete, which was last fall. So most of those guarantees have already been in effect. Like the mechanical systems have been operating all winter. So even though we're closing out now, any 5-year guarantee is going to be 4 years come fall.
Yes, thank you. All right, any other questions? Okay. Well,
Okay.
thank you.
Thank you very much. Hopefully, I'll see you when next I see you, we'll be 100% done.
100%
We'll be
closed
celebrating.
out. Thank you for following up on the last remaining items. We greatly appreciate your
We will do
time and
that.
energy on this.
You're welcome. Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right, keep us moving along. Next, we have a discussion of proposed property tax exemption for volunteer firefighters and volunteer ambulance workers. Have a good night, guys. Thank you. All right, last we talked about this was after a 3-hour budget presentation. I think everyone was kind of bleary-eyed. So we're bringing this back. You have all the documents. Hopefully everyone's had a chance to review them. This would not, just as a reminder, this would not apply for the tax rolls that would go out in September. This would be for future. We have until 2025 to determine if we offer it, but I believe the county's already agreed to this. What this is we can offer up to 10% to our volunteer firefighters and ambulance workers. So we would determine the number. That's one decision we make. If we choose to move forward with this. As a refresher, the property must be owned by the volunteer firefighter or ambulance worker. The property must be their primary residence. They must be located within the jurisdiction served by the fire company, department, or ambulance service. So you can't volunteer, say, in another county and take the tax exemption here. You have to be serving this community. The volunteer firefighter ambulance worker must be certified by the authority, having jurisdiction. So the first question before us is whether we wish to do this. If we do decide to move forward, there are some other questions we need to answer. But before we get into that, and there is a minimum service requirement of 2 to 5 years. And we can set the length, whether it's 2 years or 5 years. So anyone have any thoughts on how they feel about offering this tax exemption? We currently offer veterans tax exemptions as well, and we offer STAR senior citizens tax exemptions too.
Yes, senior citizen and disabled.
And disabled. Thank you, Joe.
Yeah. So it's just the volunteer firefighters and the Garrison and ambulance workers that live in our school district.
Yes, so it would include, and we have had a letter you'll see in your, from the Continental Village Volunteer Firefighter Department. which a portion of the Continental Village is part of our district as well. So it would apply to those firefighters. I believe they sent the same letter to Lakeland as well. And then the
These
Garrison.
are all volunteers. There's no paid firefighters that would be eligible in our district for this because we don't have paid firefighting force.
And that is my understanding. I also, based on what I've read in the paper, and maybe you folks know from being around in town, that people aren't jumping up and down to necessarily serve in these positions, and it is hard for them sometimes to recruit, but very necessary. If anyone had the fire department show up, they're great. We did have a chimney fire during COVID. They all came. They're all volunteers.
Is there a pattern of standard practice on this in other communities nearby?
Well, this is new, right? So the governor just put this in, so we're just starting to see this.
So no one has it yet, or a few haven't. Because it was added at the same time as the new limits for senior citizens and all that. It was created in the fall for something that schools and towns could access. So it works the same way in that if you give this exemption, it doesn't affect the amount of taxes that Garrison raises. It just redistributes the burden to others. So, it doesn't hurt or help the district, but it may help fire departments recruit locals to volunteer at the departments.
Can I just clarify too? I keep reading the documents, and I'm sorry that I didn't read them too thoroughly, but they have to have 20 years of service?
No, between
No.
2 and 5 years.
2 and 5 years
Okay.
to qualify, and then if you want to make it permanent after 20 years of service,
Okay,
we
got
have
it.
that option to offer. So there are a couple, it is confusing because sort of the first question is, do we want to do this and to what point? If we do, then the additional options available to us are to make it permanent for any firefighter or ambulance worker after 20 years of service. So even if they no longer serve, they still have the tax exemption, provided they maintain their primary residence in in the school district. They move or transfer residency to, say, Florida in their retirement, then it would no longer follow them.
Can I just clarify too, if someone serves, say, for 10 years and then they stop serving for whatever reason, does that?
The exemption stops.
It
Stops.
Yeah.
And there's a way to, like, we have to annually check up on folks who request this exemption, or do they have to?
They have to submit paperwork,
Every
I
year.
believe, every year, yeah.
Okay.
Because you need to know that they're
Still
still
active.
active
Yeah,
and they're
okay.
serving.
My understanding is that our volunteer firefighting departments and ambulance groups are very aware of this and have been prepping their members as to, what it would take to apply.
What evidence is there that this actually will affect the number of recruits they get? I mean, we're just speculating about that?
We are
Yes. We don't
We
speculating.
don't really know, right?
No.
Is there any other, outside of New York State, is there any evidence out there somewhere in this great country of ours where this kind of thing has been done and what the results have been?
Not that I've looked at. I was just looking at New York data, but I do know that I'm trying to think of Joe, help me out here if you've heard of others. Wappingers has adopted it.
David, my own personal opinion would be, let's say for argument's sake, you pay $20,000 a year in property tax, 10% deduction, you save $2,000. For the many, many hours that a volunteer ambulance worker puts in, that's not much money. I think it's more a way of saying thank you for your service, as opposed to, and this is just my view, I have no evidence to support this, but I don't know that it will necessarily increase and motivate people who otherwise would not be interested in volunteering to volunteer.
That makes sense to me. I mean, we shouldn't do this with the expectation that there's going to be a new wave of applicants. We should do it for the reason that you specified.
Do we have a sense of how much this would increase other people's taxes?
Minimal. I don't know exactly what it is, but it's, you don't have a lot of volunteer firefighters and a 10% reduction on one single-family house spread amongst all the rest of, it's not going to
Is that
change.
still true when we add up all the exemptions together?
Yes. The incremental amount from this compared to all the rest, no, it's not going to make a dent in that. You're more likely to have a change from the equalization rate than this.
We're making further progress than last time in this discussion.
Are there other groups that this sets a precedent for who would say that exemption sounds good?
There are possibly, but they'd have to lobby the governor and
What
get,
would they be?
Like, so they'd be volunteer-based or in service of communities?
If I had to bet what would be the next one, I would say healthcare workers. But that's just a guess.
Well, it's interesting. I mean, although they're paid employees, they're just some of them are underpaid.
Well, we had healthcare worker bonuses and things, so that's why I'm thinking maybe it might be them.
Well, the only wrinkle with that is they'd have to serve within Garrison,
But you
and
can't
we
do
probably
that.
don't have that
Unless you work
opportunity
at
for them.
Dr. Gergel's
Unless you work
office.
at Dr. Gurley, yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
I'm persuaded in a vacuum. It's just, it feels like you could draw up a pretty persuasive argument for lots of different groups of all kinds across all districts, across the whole country, and then eventually, this is completely hypothetical, you could get everybody to qualify for an exemption based on like all the wonderful things that so many people do in so many different ways. So.
Don't so many people qualify right now with the basic, what is it, the basic stars?
Basic
like-
star, yeah. So
every
if you-
single
If you
person
live in the
qualifies.
house that
Yeah,
you
I know.
own, you have an exemption.
Right.
Yeah.
You know.
I mean, I'm not against it on those grounds, because that's like a sort of silly hypothetical. But I was just
Yeah.
curious if if this was going to sort of create some precedent that would then cascade through, like if there are people waiting in the wings being like, oh, if this starts happening across New York, we should immediately get in line, or if that's just a silly paranoid vision and nobody's really paying attention and this is just a great idea.
Matt, it sounds like you're campaigning for an exemption for school board
Yeah,
volunteers.
For example.
I hear what you're saying on that, but I don't feel like it's our job to worry about
Sure.
whatever the governor's going to do. I think taking this in a vacuum, just this issue, I certainly don't have any problem with
No, I
with
don't
this.
either.
And so
I'm just thinking out loud.
yeah, I think, and to be clear, our authority
Yeah.
only
I wanted to
extends
make
to
a little
this
more
one.
interesting. It was getting a little dull.
I appreciate that.
Yeah, but no, I think it sounds good.
All right, so then do we have consensus that we would offer it? Are we in favor, does anyone have a number that they like? Do you want to look at what other districts have done, where they've gone to the full 10%? This isn't something we adopt tonight, we also have to have a public hearing on this, this is the next step. And when we have the public hearing at that meeting, then we can close the public hearing, is my understanding, open another meeting and adopt it at that time. But we have to notice the public hearing, this isn't happening right away, things like that.
So let me propose that we do this at 10%, and consider that as the proposal.
After how many years of service?
Somewhere
Two,
between 2 to
three,
5,
two,
right?
2 to 5 years.
Yeah,
So when they say 2 to 5, they're asking us to
pick a number.
So
yeah.
in other words, after 2 years minimum, you'd have it. You wouldn't have it until 2 years?
Right.
Yeah, you have to
I
serve.
say 2, why not?
Yeah.
I mean, what's the difference? Yeah, if they're volunteering to do this thing, then.
Sure, Matt, let's just give away the store.
I mean, now that I'm persuaded, I'm all in.
Well, you're giving away your own money, so do what you want.
be coming back to us.
As homeowners, you're giving away your own money, so do what you want.
And then additional, after our public hearing, and the resolution, we can then also look at whether we wish to offer it after 20 years of service, provided they continue to live here. I think that is going to be a very small number of individuals who would qualify for the 10% after 20 years of service. So I would support that one. If anyone's willing to do it. The other ones are extend the benefit to unmarried surviving spouses of deceased eligible volunteers. Provide, and this one I think it's a little trickier for Joe's office, but they have to remain unmarried after the deceased volunteer and has been enrolled for at least 20 years, and they have to stay at the property.
They have to remain unmarried?
Yes, to be eligible for the benefit.
David's out.
I would
Right?
agree, tracking that
I don't
se-
know how to
seems a bit,
reliably do that.
I would like to look and see if other districts have done that one. I would not support necessarily that exemption. I think that is asking for more work, and it probably doesn't apply to a lot of people. I would support
There's a lot of precedent for that in Social Security benefits and other benefits. I
Navy
mean, I-
benefits, yeah, I guess
And
that's
it's
true.
such a small,
And it won't happen for at least
20 years.
No, I guess someone who, so you can come in, if you've got 15 years of service right now, say, then next year will be your 16th. So in 4 years after that, they could potentially
Yes.
start burdening your data collection. I mean, I think we should give the 10% for both. The unremarried, just because of the precedents and,
it's
And
such a
when you're-
small, it's not a huge group, and honestly, those folks probably need it more than anybody,
Okay. And then
as long as they're not trying to grift the system.
We have to make sure they're not dating.
that goes under
So you
Joe's
get to
new job.
monitor dating profiles.
Joe's got it sitting out in the car outside with some binoculars.
Joe's going to attend all fires, just to be sure. Fire
Joe gets
monitor.
another hat.
The third one is extend the benefit to unmarried surviving spouses of eligible volunteers who died in the line of duty, which I think we should do along with the other two, unless there's other objections. Okay. All right, Dusty, do you have what you need in order for us to move forward then in, say, a month's time with a public hearing or looking at the
Yeah, and
timeline?
I don't know if it's something you want to wait until you have a full board
We may wish to
place?
do that, actually, if we want to wait until,
after.
No,
June-
get it in, Matt's agreeing to it. Hurry up.
we can do it in June. June's our celebratory month. We have all the student presentations and exciting things, and we can talk about this too. Be a great public, yeah.
Okay.
We could wait. We could do it in June.
Yeah,
if we
whatever,
have time.
yeah.
How many weeks do you need to notify it for the public notices for the hearing? Is it like 4?
I don't think it's that tight. Yeah,
It's not that
I don't think I need that much time.
Okay.
Yeah, but I'll definitely double check.
Great. There we go. It was a lot easier to have that discussion when we hadn't done 3 hours of budget first, so glad we pushed that off. Thank you for the suggestion. Next up, this is going to be a fun one. So, discuss the designation of the NYSSBA liaison. When Madeline left the board in March, she was our NYSSBA liaison. NYSSBA is a New York State School Board Association. Last meeting, we had this on, and Matt, you weren't here, so we thought you really wanted this. But what this would involve, and Dusty, jump in and correct me if I'm wrong, this is just until June 30th at the reorg. We will do committee assignments with new board members. We will find new liaisons to NYSSBA and our other associations and our high schools. NYSSBA has now sent out their packets. When are resolutions due if we wish to propose a resolution?
July 14th, which is 2 days after our
Reorg.
reorg. Yeah.
This is really about if we're going to, last year, I know you were great at helping to author that resolution, but it's really about whether the board is looking again to put forth a resolution for NYSSBA to consider to propose at their annual meeting. If that's something we're going to do, we do need a NYSSBA liaison. And that's really the only duty of this person until then. So I guess my first question, let's backtrack a little bit now we have everyone here. Is that something we wish to pursue in the next couple of months, is looking to put forth a resolution to NYSSBA on any issue? Because if it is, I want to make sure we get somebody in this role who's really going to feel, I know you're overburdened at work. I don't want to like slam you with authoring things.
I haven't thought of any resolution that I would like to propose personally.
Maybe we ought to give that until the next meeting to sort of think about any resolutions that we might want to propose.
Well, here's what, I would be happy to be the NYSSBA liaison for the next 2 months. But if we need to write a resolution, I'm going to get all of you to help.
Yeah.
So,
I promise to help if we
fair.
land on one.
okay. So you can give them my name. Are they just going to email me a bunch now, more than they usually do?
Don't they already?
Yeah, I know.
I like our old resolution.
I mean,
Re-up it.
we could do that. A lot of districts put the same resolution forward again. So is that something you all would like to see on a future agenda so we could have a discussion and get it ready to go again? I don't know what we need to do on that.
Yeah, I'll pull stuff from last year.
Okay. We'll look at that. And there we go. All right. So that was painless, and Matt, you're off the hook.
Thank you, Sarah.
You're very welcome. All right. Next up, we have the, let's see, the Westchester Putnam School Board Association budget vote and slate of officers vote. I'm going to read the recommended action. Be it resolved, the Board of Education of the Garrison Union Free School District does hereby cast its vote to ratify the 2023-2024 WPSBA budget and the slate of 2023-2024 officers and members of Board of Directors as presented, and further, the district clerk will submit the official ballot on behalf of the board for the WPSBA annual meeting. May I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Okay. Just for full disclosure, I am on this ballot as I have been a part of their board. I've worked with their board of directors, and I think they're all very hardworking individuals who, in addition to working on their own boards, donate a great deal of their time to the School Boards Association.
Are you looking for a tax exemption?
Not at this time.
Okay. Fantastic.
But if you have any questions about what they're doing, there is an increase in their dues, which is noted here for districts. But overall, I found them to be helpful. I don't know if anyone else has been able to attend any of their sessions. I went to their continuing education law one this year, which I think you went to one year too. I find that one always very interesting. But they offer basically training. Our new school board members would have the option to take their state mandated training through the Westchester Putnam School Board Association. They offered a night for new school board members, prospective members, to get a sense of what it means to be a school board member. On the board of directors, they are constantly sharing information. So for example, if our board ever had a question about how another district is handling a particular policy, I can bring that to them and ask. And they're always quick to chime in. So I found that to be a useful resource, also because it's all localized. And they provided us this fun booklet with facts and figures if you want to read all about our neighboring districts. Anyone have any questions? Okay. I'm going to go ahead and move to a vote then. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Nays? Abstentions? All right. Public comment. Public comment is intended for members of the community to speak openly and voice concerns in accordance with Policy 1510 of the Garrison Union Free School District. Any person wishing to speak shall comply with all provisions of this policy. Comments about specific school personnel or individual students is a violation of board policy. Concerns regarding students or personnel should be discussed privately with the superintendent or appropriate administrator. Comments should be limited to 3 minutes, and speakers are asked to conduct themselves in a respectful manner. The board will listen to comments but will not engage in any dialogue. Any necessary follow-up will be noted and provided through the appropriate channel. Members of the public wishing to comment during board meetings are asked to place their name and town of residence on the sign-in sheet over there. Commenters will be invited to the podium to address the board. I don't have anyone signed up yet, but if anyone wants to speak. Okay, I'll go ahead and move on then. We will have another option towards the end of the meeting if anyone changes their mind. Acceptance of the minutes. Be it resolved, the Board of Education of the Garrison Union Free School District hereby accept the minutes of the regular meeting of April 25th, 2023 as presented. May I have a motion, please?
Second.
Thank you. Any questions or comments on the minutes as presented? All right, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. Nays, abstentions. CSE, CPSE recommendations. Be it resolved, Board of Education of the Garrison Union Free School District approve the Committee on Special Education, excuse me, CSE, and the Committee on Preschool Special Education, CPSE, recommendations and student placements. May I have a motion, please?
So moved. Second.
Great job, guys. All right, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. Nays, abstentions. All right, moving on to the consent agenda. Be it resolved, the Board of Education of the Garrison Union Free School District hereby approves the items of the personnel consent agenda as presented. May I have a motion, please?
So moved. Second.
Thank you. Okay, this looks like we are just doing a couple of non-certified per diem substitutes as well as an election inspector. Okay, anyone have any questions? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Nays, abstentions. On to new business items. Be it resolved, the Board of Education of the Garrison Union Free School District, upon the recommendation of the superintendent, does hereby approve the new business items as presented. May I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Thank you. These are more health and welfare contracts, which we had a bunch in the last meeting, again, for our students who attend schools in other districts. We pay these fees. Any questions?
There's just to mention, there's also
Oh, did I miss-
contracts for the students, the special education students that attend Hendrick Hudson.
Oh, thank you. Anyone have any questions for Carl or Joe? All right. All in favor? Please say aye.
Aye.
Nays? Abstentions? Okay. We've come to our second public comment of the evening. Sign up is here. I'm going to go ahead and move on then to board member comment and other discussion. Jocelyn?
So I'm just going to bring up the incidents that happened in Carmel High School, which some of you may be following in our local news. And I bring it up because it happened in a school, and the school board and the superintendent, and eventually the Putnam County, one of their committees, so some of their legislators, are having to deal with a situation that could it be prevented? So I just kind of want to have a discussion at some point, or to think about not how they responded to the incident, because I'm sure they got their legal counsel to tell them how to do it. I'm sure they followed their code of conduct. I'm assuming the DA and the sheriff did what they were supposed to do. So instead, the discussion that I'm more interested in is really how do we talk to our students about it here at Guffs? Because it happened right here, and it could literally happen here. And how do we prevent it from potentially occurring? Not the exact incident, of course, but something in the same kind of fashion or in a similar vein that I would say involves social media, involves racist or biased attacks, doesn't necessarily have to impersonate school personnel, which is what this one did. But that it does something pretty egregious and kind of is starting to tear that community slightly apart. So wondering not what the school is doing, but like what would we want as a board? Our students to know about. Should they know about this incident? Do they? Do you all?
I followed it in the papers, what I've seen. And I think Carl can probably speak to actions our district can take. I think I understand that from the community's perspective, it can be frustrating because discipline of a student is never revealed due to FERPA and privacy. And I think there's frustration there in that community. But outside of that issue, I think the things that really concern the board here would be when we look at our code of conduct and renewing it and how we're sharing that with students and
So
what
I
that
agree,
understands.
except that is what you do once something happens, right? How do you discipline or take action when an incident occurs? So I think what's obviously more necessary and very difficult to act on, right, of course, is how do you prevent this from happening?
I'm having a brain freeze. What's the incident you're referring to?
There was a posted TikTok video posted by some Carmel High School students that, first of all, like dubbed words over the principal's face saying racist things, and then there was also content that suggested killing or shooting people of color. And it was posted. And this happened, I think, in March or February. But it's still bubbling, right? Because just a couple weeks ago, there was an angry set of community members at the one of the legislature's, what is it, Protective Services Committee hearing or something. So this happened right in Carmel. And so,
And
like,
these angry community people were saying what?
well, it varies. I mean, the only accounts I've heard is the angry community members saying there wasn't good enough communication with the community after the incident occurred, and other complaints are, should there have been arrests? But I want to point out that is not what I'm talking about. I don't want to criticize or talk about how they responded. I want us to not have it happen here through preventive measures. I don't know what those are. Like, I'm just trying to throw it out there so we think about them.
Jocelyn, what I would say, unfortunately, racism and violence is not new. What I think is new in this particular case is using AI, a new technology, to promote violence and racism or scare. I don't know what the intent was. I don't know all that much about it. And I do believe we are doing an awful lot anti-racism, anti-bias, and in trying to educate our children, and not just with one-time assembly programs. We do those things, but integrating it into all that we do in the classrooms from a very early age. What I think is new about this is the technology that these students decided to leverage or use, and it's a powerful technology. In the news recently, someone who worked on AI, was one of the leading experts at Google, stepped down because of, they're holding back. This technology is incredibly powerful and could be used for good, and it could be used to do some real damage. And I think we have a lot of work to do. We had this discussion probably, I don't know, about 6 weeks ago, when Chat GBT was released, and, is it something, dangerous, or something we should, prevent our students or block it? We decided as a school district to take the approach it's not going away. There'll be many other, AI, technologies that are even much more powerful than what exists right now. But to teach our students that, this powerful technology can be used for good, or it can be used to do some real damage and hurt. But I think a lot of what needs to happen is educating our staff. We've started that, but we do have a lot of plans over the course of the summer, because in some ways the students are way ahead of us. I've heard it described. The students are digital natives, and we are digital immigrants. It's new to us, and in some cases, 12, 13-year-old kids are way ahead of us on their use in social media. So I think as adults, and maybe there's even something that we ought to do with parents. I think it's a busy time of year now, but in the fall, Mr. Yap is here. Of course, he has a lot of expertise in this area. So I'm thinking maybe in the fall, we could do a parent, maybe partner with our PTA and do a little more education there, because we haven't done much of that up until this point. I do think we do a lot with our students.
I would challenge putting all the emphasis on this new technology. I mean, we just saw the leading cable television star in this country flagrantly making racist claims on his channel, and talking, which is this bizarre thing that he just said about how 3-on-1, it's not the way white men fight, which makes me think that apparently that's a view that is held by many people in this country. I mean, what it makes me want to do is to figure out a way to finance a trip to the Legacy Museum in Alabama for our students, because this is turning up in this country, not turning down. But I wouldn't put it all on technology. I mean, there's something deeper than technology. I mean, there's a lot, and we can't get into that now, or it's too much to get into now. But I think the idea that racism is on the rise in the popular culture is something that really needs to be taken seriously, not just because of technology.
What I'm hearing is that there are two issues, which I think you did separate there's the issue of how are we reaching our students on bias and bullying, and then there's the sort of vehicle for that, which in this case is social media and may continue to be social media or whatever this new technology. Those are almost two separate issues. It's sort of like how you use your technology. We can do seminars and whatnot in terms of how do we address bullying? Are we doing enough there? Are we doing enough in education on bias? Is that something that the DEI committee has taken up? Is there more they could do on that? Or does it need to come from us? Like, I'm wondering, do they need more of an initiative from us to make that happen?
Well, the committee is us. I mean, it's
Yeah.
just the board committee. I mean, I would say what I was most interested in, well, I'm always interested in what you say, Carl, but you brought up parents. And I think, for example, and you could broaden parents to the community. I mean, that is something that we do not do, right? We do not communicate about these issues broadly as a district with the community. I mean, there's a community coalition, right, of Haldane, Guffs, Desmond Fish, and Butterfield, the public institutions in the town trying to work on these issues. But I do think, I don't know. I mean, I'm with you. This is not, and I don't even know if we have to go to the Legacy Museum, although I want that. I wonder, was anyone talking about this incident with their families or students? You know, meaning our teachers or ourselves talking about it. And I don't, maybe you're not supposed to or you don't have to, but I'm just curious, because if you're not talking about it, that says something. Mm-hmm. And I don't know, for example, in our high schools that we go to, how did our high schools address it? Because it was an incident in a high school, right? So maybe we are sheltering our young ones from it. But I mean, how was it felt? And especially across the county, right? I mean, I'm sure you've heard because superintendents are always talking. But I don't know. I mean, I know that they held a day in Carmel, you know, for all the staff to like come together and get a training. Mm-hmm. And that's a good start, but.
I'm just having trouble engaging everything you're saying because I just feel like there's so much packed into what you're saying. And I agree with the pressing urgency of all of it, but it's, there's the points David was making about racism, the deep tradition and growing urgency surrounding racism in America. Sure. There's school shootings, gun violence. Yeah. There's malicious use of social media and artificial intelligence. So these are like, I'm just overwhelmed by your question. I don't know where to, it's not, my silence is not meant to be interpreted as like apathy. I just don't know.
I don't take anything of this.
Yeah, I don't know where to begin. Your question is overwhelming to me in this particular moment.
It is overwhelming.
But
how do you prevent it?
Right, well.
No one knows the answer.
True, although these are not things that are being introduced tonight in our conversations. I mean, we have, I think, along with, I mean, we are all falling short on all of these issues, but we are engaging these issues, I think, with intentionality and urgency. The resolution we mentioned earlier that failed last year was about safe storage of guns in our community. We're working on that and falling short. Anti-racism, which Carl mentioned, we've been taught, I mean, you're the head of the DI committee, and we continue to feel the urgency of that, falling short. And as you said, Carl, we don't even know where to begin when it comes to artificial intelligence.
Right. I mean, I feel the same. That's why I'm posing the question.
Yeah, yeah. No, these are good questions, but so I share I don't know how to articulate my sense of like, it's an odd marriage of urgency and speechlessness, which is not productive. I recognize
here's
that, but
one-
I want to at least honor the import of the questions and then feel all the more useless in not having any constructive answers.
Yeah.
Although I do want to at least tip my hat to the fact that like we have been engaging these issues before this incident. We have been aware as a community and as a board that these things really are challenges and problems, and
Definitely.
we are brainstorming and offering our minds and hearts and ears to the community for suggestions and solutions all the time to all of these enormous issues, including racism, gun violence, and social media. I mean, these are things that are like pressing on our students and on ourselves.
Yeah.
Let me just pick out one part of this, and maybe this isn't the place for this kind of conversation or an extended one. But Carl, so this guy who could probably get 40% of the vote in this country if he ran for president, Mr. Carlson, said today, made a statement that 3-on-1 is not the way white men fight, okay? It's just frightening. Anybody who knows anything about police brutality in this country knows that is exactly how white men fight. That's an accurate statement of how white police have functioned in this country. Now, is there a way to, I'm for third graders, is there any kind of opportunity in the middle school to say, well, let's talk about what's happening this week in this country? And here's this guy, he's a very popular, famous celebrity, and this is what he says. And then have a discussion about it. I mean, so that it's not like we're all inoculated against any kind of awareness of what's happening in the world that we live in. I mean, there ought to be a way to surface that and take it seriously, because it is serious that he would say that.
I think what I'm hearing is there's a couple sort of ways we could move forward with this from the board perspective and keeping mindful of our role. Well, the first would be then to ask Carl to maybe go and ask the teachers or through Allison, first of all, do they feel comfortable having these conversations? I understand they have a lot to teach as well. There are things, I believe, incorporated in like the social studies curriculum of CNN 10 and things like that. But is there something they need from us in order to further that? Or do they have some thoughts? Because they're the ones with the kids every day. So it'd be wonderful to hear from our staff as to their thoughts on bringing these issues into the classroom. So that would be one place to start. The next, when you're speaking about how big all these ideas are, hopefully, we're going to find a date for it. We're going to have a board retreat this summer. Maybe we should set an hour, maybe more aside, where we talk about how all those really big topics, how are they working their way into all our different committees? So how is this impacting policy? Does policy need a meeting specially set aside just to talk about how some of these big issues are impacting our policies? DEI. And then we circle them all back to the communications piece, which you've mentioned again. So that sounds like it might be a necessary conversation for us to have. And then again, at the end of that, come up with what information do we need from our district to know going forward, if that makes sense. Because we know we set a code of conduct. Is there something else the school needs from us in that code of conduct? Is there, different assemblies they need or things? Because I think we need to sort of ask the question of them. Does that make sense as a way forward so that it's not just big ideas?
Yeah, I'll just add, and Matt touched on this. We've been working. We're not even close to where we want to be, but the board, you ought to know, you do approve budgets that support professional development. And we have an ongoing partnership with Eastern Suffolk BOCES and their DEI team. They were here just this past conference day. They will be back at our June conference day working with the staff. And David, to your point, when there's a current event that should be addressed, I have to say, the feedback from teachers is we need more training. These are delicate conversations. What is age appropriate? Do I speak to our 6th grade class the same way that I present this to the 8th grade class? And that's what I've heard from staff. I think we're getting better at it. But I think, as a board and as a district, we do need to provide ongoing support. We're doing it, but we need to continue doing it.
You've been very aggressive in a very positive way in addressing the climate issue. You have someone in the school who's actually on staff who's doing that, right? And it seems to me that the race question, given the fact that this is so dominantly a white community, is something that we really need to be talking about here.
Definitely.
Anyone else? This lovely discussion, thank you for initiating a discussion versus just comments. Does anyone else have any thoughts to share? And we'll have some follow-up on this and then bring it forward onto a future agenda. Okay? And you go, at any time, you can send me dates in July that you would like to have a board retreat. Excited to get that scheduled. I'm going to keep going then. David? No other comment? Okay. Courtney? Kent?
No comment.
Matt? Okay. I'm just going to add, this is, I believe, our last board meeting before the Youth Climate Summit, and I really hope all board members and everyone is able to attend. Board members, I don't know if you saw, you have been invited to attend the daytime programming. I don't know if that's possible for everyone, but if you are available and would like to, let Carl's office know, and we can see what's happening with the school. That won't be open to the community. The evening program from 4:30 to 7 is open to everyone in the community. I think we all reach different groups of the community, so I was hoping we could all reach out to different community members, maybe who aren't connected to the school, and encourage them to come and see what's happening here. This is a great way, right before our budget vote, to see what the school does. So if you guys want to each think, send emails, send some texts. If you bump into somebody in Food Town, maybe encourage them. There'll be food trucks, lots of great presentations. You get to see the campus. So it's my big plug for the Youth Climate Summit, and a big thank you to Rachel Arbor and Mr. Yap for pulling it all together. We are doing quite a big production with a very small staff. So really appreciative of all the efforts. That's all I've got. All right. Next is enter into executive session. Be it resolved, the Board of Education of the Garrison Union Free School District hereby enters into executive session for the purpose of receiving legal counsel and discussing the employment history of particular persons. May I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Okay. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Nays? Abstentions? We will adjourn executive session without any further action being taken. All right. Everyone shut down your computers.